Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of the Ask Engine Show. We're super excited to get in today. It's a little chilly here in Fayetteville. I think it's -12 or -13. My car was not happy this morning starting, but we made it here anyways. No snow.
No snow.
Just freezing cold temperatures, but that's okay. So we're excited. We've got, I think, 4 questions today to jump into it, so we'll go ahead and get started in.
The Conquest 2 asks, he has a B2B startup that needs marketing advice.
You know, that's interesting.
that one?
I mean, this is a two-sided marketplace, right? I mean, anytime you have a two-sided marketplace, Metcalfe's law comes into effect. So it's the classic computer equation. It says the value of a network is the square of the number of users. So if Blake has a telephone and I have a telephone, marginally useful. If John Max joins in, all of a sudden now you get more. You get 1 million people with a telephone. It's not 1 million times more. It's 1 million squared times more. And so, I mean, that's the beginning. You have to get to a critical mass of size. If someone posts a job and there's no designer there to do it, that person's not going to use the system again. And likewise, if a designer signs up and there's no work, it doesn't feed on itself. So you're right. You have to do something to get the ball rolling down the hill. You have to cheat. You have to get one side of that done in the first little bit, and that's the classic advice of a two-sided marketplace. Now, how you do that? Well, you have to pick one side, and then once you have one side built up, it's relatively easier to then do the other side. So, yeah, it's not a how do you get the ball rolling? I mean, it's literally a twofold, two different strategies, most likely marketing campaign that you'll need to do, and one will come easier than the other. So, how would you start?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the mentioning on a tight budget, I don't know a two-sided marketplace that has been successful that has not either taken a decade or that has not raised an incredible amount of funding. I mean, like I think of Airbnb, Uber, things of that nature. The profitability, I mean, you're basically taking a transactional margin off of the two parties. Like you're a connector, you're a matchmaker at that point. And so the margin of the monies that you make, if you're having to remain profitable with taking that margin, you're either going to be too expensive for the marketplace because, I mean, you have Fiverr, you have Upwork, you have 99 Designs, you have a plethora of different companies that are already doing something very similar. So the first thing I would tell you to do is you need to be able to have capital, or you need to understand that it's going to take a very long time, and you'll very rarely hit critical mass in a period of time that you need to for it to survive. But going into it, how you build it, I think, like you said, you focus on one side of the market and you focus on small subsections. So when Uber started, they did not try to take on globally. You know, they did one city. Once that city hit a tipping point of drivers and users, they moved to the next city. Same thing with Airbnb. They had a very tactical approach. And they picked those cities, they picked those places because they knew they would have the quickest user adoption, which would then lead into more people driving because they wanted to earn money.
Well, it's Facebook's old strategy. They started in Harvard, completely swamped the campus, and then you've got the network effect. And then they moved to Ivy League schools, swamped each of them because there was logical connections outward, and then it was colleges, and only then did grandma get her account. It was after they started a bunch of micro networks, and then those networks had network effect, and then it worked. So the niche approach is what you have to do here. On a small budget. I don't think funding's the right answer necessarily on this. I think you have to solve the product market fit thing, and I think you have to do it on a niche level. You're not, to your point, going to compete against Fiverr and some of the larger ones straight out of the gate. How are you better? How are you 10x better is the better question. And then once you have that, then if you find a small enough group that all talk to each other, and then you can go spend money against that and impact the entire thing. It wouldn't be expensive to, if you're a Harvard student, to go, impact all Harvard students. So what's your equivalent of that? I don't know the answer, but maybe there is one.
Well, and I think one unique problem that they need to watch out for is they need to really solidify kind of their platform's unique value give, because otherwise these relationships you're going to build, they're going to say, well, why don't we go off of this platform and kind of route around your way of making profit. So figuring out what your platform really brings to the table to keep them using the platform for these contractual relationships is huge.
And I think like trust goes into that massively. I mean, one of the biggest things when you're hiring freelancers, especially freelancers that are either in foreign countries or things of that nature, having the trust factor of knowing that work's going to be delivered. If it's not delivered, there's a risk loss assessment there. So being able to being able to come in and say, look, there's absolutely no risk for you to try our service. If you pay $10 and you don't get the services or goods delivered, then we refund you that $10 back. So I think that's really interesting. How would you go about, and I really like what you mentioned, starting with a small segment, how would you go about finding an underserved market? Because I think that's the most deliverable, actionable piece of advice we can give here is that from a Google perspective, from like looking at trends, how would you start that process? So I think for me, I would start by mapping out who's currently being served by what platform, and then try and find the white space in there.
Well, I think you have to find, if you read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, I mean, there's a lot of things I disagree with in that book, but I think it just in politics in general, let's say, but there's some brilliant things in there as well. And one of the things in there is find the largest subsegment of market you can reliably come in and dominate. And so to do that, you have to have a real firm grasp of what the problem is and solve the problem. So find that niche, solve a problem in that niche, go to market with that, and then from there expand outward. It gives you a cash flowing base to then grow off of. And that to me is the best thing from that book, and I've quoted it 100 times, though I don't think I've recommended that book to anybody, interestingly enough. So anyway, what's next?
Yeah. Wiry Filefish asks, my attempts to sell online are not going as well as they should. What could I be doing better?
Yeah, so they have physical locations.
Yeah.
I think it's a crowded market, I would imagine. I don't know anything about the e-cigarette market. I mean, Blake, maybe you do. But I'll take it back to something I do know. There's a local company I've worked with who's built a really nice niche in a very incredibly crowded space, one that has REI and Moose Jaw, and so the outdoor space, Bass Pro Shop, Cabela's. I mean, imagine the competition here, not to mention Walmart and Amazon and whatever. And what they've done is they've taken their omni-channel presence and leverage that. So they've got 12 stores in a bunch of different out-of-the-way places that you would never see REI or any of those come into. So they've got a decent little business there. And they asked the same question. It was literally the exact same question, but phrase, replace electronic cigarettes with outdoors. And I said, you've got to come in and own your 12 markets. To go out, just like the last question, to go out and compete against REI and Moose Jaw and Cabela's and Bass Pro and whoever else, I mean, that's a tough gig. They've got the volume, so they're going to be able to beat up the suppliers on pricing. They've got shipping discounts with FedEx. Good luck on that. They've got a lot of revenue that they can amortize the fulfillment operation around, and so they're just in a better spot to beat you at selling commodities. You have to have value in some way. And so that can either be through adding value to the equation better than the others. So why should I buy this instead of this? I mean, that's good advice that you give them when they walk in the door. What should I buy? I'm a first-time hiker. What should I get? What shoe should I get? Whatever. And so on the omnichannel side, what I told them is when someone walks in that door, you've got a very easy ask to get their email address from them. So not only do you know who they are and where they are and what store they shop at, you ought to be able to build an account pretty easily off that person that's actionable. And so turn it into an omnichannel experience. REI may or may not have that person's email address. Well, you just got it and you incentivize the deal. Hey, I'm going to give you local things. And so you've got an advantage at that point. Once you've got them hooked, you've got them online and you've got them offline. Well, REI is a good example. They're never going to build a store in those markets. So same with this electronic guy. So someone walks in, get their email address, and figure out how to then do best practices around that to activate them both into the store and online. Who cares where they buy at that point? So that's a start.
Yeah, and I think online it's very tricky because ultimately with Facebook, Twitter, I know Facebook for sure, I know Twitter for sure, maybe Instagram as well. You can't actually directly market these products. So you can't go in and sell, hey, buy my e-cigarette.
Right.
Tobacco products are not allowed. So what you do is a hybrid approach. So whenever you're marketing something that is gray area against Facebook's TOS, the worst thing you can do is try and fly under the radar, because if you get to any sort of scale, they're going to knock you down, and you're depending on that revenue at that point. So a really good way to do this is move to other markets and drive to content. The best e-cigarette YouTube channel that reviews e-cigarettes, that reviews liquids, I guarantee you they get a heck of a lot more traffic than someone else who's just trying to say, sell my product, buy my product. And so putting out great content, building a Facebook group. Build a Facebook group about people who, there's like a whole cloud smoking competition like thing that goes on in the US. I don't know what it's called, but find those subcultures, find those niches, and then become the mouthpiece for those niches, or those submarkets, or become the place that they come and congregate. If you do that, you sell much more naturally. So that's a way to get around Facebook's TOS. You can run Facebook ads to a group about tobacco. You can't sell tobacco directly on the platform. So it's a way to get around it. Google AdWords is completely free. I mean, you can go in and buy AdWords based on the type of, like, it's Suicide Bunny, I know, is a company that makes the liquid juice. You can go and buy their flavors, you can go buy their name and outbid that. So that's a way you can use paid media for the growth, is just thinking about it conversationally and not thinking about it as direct sales. You've got to take them off the platform, or you've got to sell to them indirectly without the paid media side of it.
What's next?
Uncle Sam Sinkwell is a cartoonist that's actively producing political satire and illustration. His work is regularly published and feels that it's marketable. So what are his first steps in creating a brand around himself?
It's kind of a combination of a business model question and a marketing question. So let's make some assumptions and guess, because that's kind of what we have here. So let's assume this is really great work and it kind of speaks for itself. Let's even assume that it kind of goes a little bit viral when they put it out there. It's that good. In that case, then it's a question of how do you make money from this? There's the tried and true, just slap AdSense ads up there and make X dollars per 1,000 impressions, and that seems like a terrible, grinded out sort of existence today, and that's hard. You could turn some of them into, let's say, prints, even T-shirts. A little bit better model, but you're changing from a digital model to a physical good. So I don't know that that's necessarily ideal. The artists themselves, commissioned works. That seems like maybe a little better. If you're not this huge mass marketer idea, I mean, that seems like a good way to build up a brand and get, I don't know, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000. I have no idea how the quality of this work, but that's a route to go. What else? I mean, there are other business models you could look at.
I think the most interesting thing to me in the new era of digital, figuring out a way that you can monetize without actually monetizing your audience is something that's very intriguing to me. So figuring out, and I don't directly know the answer for this, but figuring out a way to create revenue for your business where people can come and consume for free, and then you monetize in other directions, seems very interesting to me. So think about it as a speaker who goes on a speaker circuit or speaker tour, or someone who writes a book. Typically, they're not actually making money from the book. They're making money from the tour. They're making money from other avenues. And so to me, that's very interesting, and it's also building a legacy, because as your user base grows, you can then command more from a retainer perspective, or a fee to come in and speak about it, or a fee to come in and do a live drawing. That to me is very interesting. So building an audience where you're not taking anything from that audience is going to be the quickest way for you to go out and then get a larger either commission piece, things of that nature.
This brings up sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
This brings up a question, because you've talked often about if you're selling things, plug into influencers, and how there's a great market there. Talk about the flip side, because you've managed a few influencers as well. Talk about, I mean, artist, who cares? Comic drawer, who cares? Cook, chef. How do you become an influencer in general and make money doing that?
So I mean, a lot of it is, are you talented? I mean, there are a million
Let's assume
people.
yes. Let's assume this dude's talented. let's assume, like we said earlier, his stuff goes semi-viral. He's going to get people seeing his work. So that's not the problem. How do you make money?
So how you make money, first and foremost, is you've got to amass a following of some nature. The easiest way to make money as an influencer is on a CPM basis. So people come out, they reach out to you, and I personally think that if you're under 100,000 people, you should be reaching out to companies. So you should create a hit list of, you know your demographics, you know who follows you, and then you find the top 50 companies that want to market to that audience.
And you need a press kit. You need somebody to test you out where you can say, here's the results, so white paper, all that, right? I mean,
exactly. Well, and it doesn't have to be like super like white paper. Like you don't have to go down that road unless you're dealing with a more, that type of style business. But ultimately, it's being able to talk about who your followers are, know that information. I would steer away from going into like joint venture. Being held accountable to an ROI is something that once you have a large following, once you've been through it a few times, you know exactly how your audience is going to react when you post an ad. But being on a CPM basis, you having even 5,000 followers, if those 5,000 followers are super targeted, you're a cycler, and every single person who follows you is a part of a cycling team. You go to a company and say, look, I have 5,000 cyclers, I don't have 100,000. It's depth over width. And so that's the first way you monetize, is by building a deep audience that you're connected with, that when you recommend a product, you know they're going to go purchase because you have context with them, you have depth with them. As you continue to grow bigger and bigger, honestly, the best thing you can do is your first hire should be someone who all they do is biz dev for you all day. They go in, they find companies, they say, hey, look, this is my influencer, this is who I have, this is what we can provide for you, this is what our average numbers are, and it's a negotiation at that point. And then you grow and grow and grow.
And it's more than a CPM.
Yes.
Is the thing to learn on the negotiation there. My wife, for instance, she has 10,000 Facebook followers. She's a food blogger, and just out of the blue, some company in Seattle said, hey, we'll fly you here. We'll give you a back-scenes tour of Pike Place Market. We'll give you like $1,000 worth of our cooking ware and like $2,500 stipend. And you kind of do the math. You find a few of those. I mean, it's this is a small influencer, but to your point, they are 10,000 people that cook family dinners for their family. I mean, dead in the heart of the
I know we're going for dinner tonight.
Yeah, no doubt. Come on over about 6 o'clock and you're all set.
Yeah.
But, that's the thing. But what would she have charged on a CPM basis? Even if you got all 10,000 of those people come over, you've got 10 M's or 10,000s. So 10 times 5 is $50.
Yeah.
Well, she parlayed that into probably a $5,000 worth of experience / real money. So it's not CPM.
Yeah.
It's more than that.
Yeah, it's leveraging what you have. If you know you have depth and context, then go out and ask. I mean, the biggest thing that people don't do enough when they're trying to become an influencer is just ask for what you want. You'd be amazed when you're dealing, especially with larger companies, $1,000, $5,000 is nothing to them from a media spend perspective. So go out and just ask for it, and then be able to justify, be able to back it up. If you're Kylie Jenner and you have 150 million people following you, great.
Yeah.
But if you've got context and relationship, then you sell it as, I actually have a connection with these people. What I say actually persuades them to do or not do something.
Yeah. So who knows? We may have gone way off base on this question, but that's how you think through the problem. There's 3 or 4 ways you can monetize, and to me, my favorite is probably either the commissioned work side or even this route of becoming an influencer that is saying something. You know,
very much so. And to cap that, ultimately, you got to decide what makes you happy when you're an influencer. And I shy away from saying do what you're happy about, but if you're going to be in the public, you've got to be okay with being in the public. You've got to be okay with sharing yourself. And as an influencer, people connect to you. Yes, they connect to your work, but they connect to you as well. So if you're not a particularly social or a particularly open person, take that into consideration. Because when you're doing commissioned work, I don't know half the people who put art on the walls, but they make a very good living doing it.
Yeah, I think so. Do you have one more for us?
Yeah, this last one is kind of interesting. It's from the Entrepreneur subreddit. And this is an entrepreneur's girlfriend actually asking, how do they handle the relationship with somebody who is extremely driven, time consumed by their business, and just passionate about kind of what they do. And I feel like she's feeling left out and maybe overshadowed by his entrepreneurship lifestyle.
I've looked both sides of that one, I guess, it's a minefield. I may answer it wrong, I may answer it right, but my opinion, so I was a medical resident, medical school grad, then medical school resident, and then I went straight from that into entrepreneurship. And so I kind of look at success and significance there from my side, and hopefully this translates over to a better answer for the girlfriend as well. But my wife was extremely supportive. She worked and supported our family and ran a little business that we had on the side to pay for me to go work 100-hour weeks as a medical school guy and a student and a resident, family practice resident after that. And then, wow, I mean, it was just, without that support, couldn't have done that. It bled straight into entrepreneurship. So in 2009, I started Acumen Brands. And once you get on the venture capital drug, you replace a 100-hour work week as a resident with a 100-hour work week as an entrepreneur. And that was hard. We had 3 young kids. I prioritized work over family, definitely over friends. I mean, there was no time once you got there. And just did it the wrong way. It was all consuming. And so, but my wife was completely there and completely supportive over it. So as a start engine in Hayseed Ventures, the last thing that we worked on, I mean, it was a conscious decision to work differently. Are we leaving money on the table, or are we whatever? I don't know, but I couldn't do that anymore. So I've got 3 young kids. I've got 10, 12, and 14. And, I haven't missed a volleyball practice. I haven't, done all that. So it's both sides. So yes, the girlfriend has a role in this to support that endeavor, but at the same time, there has to be some flexibility from the entrepreneur there. And boy, it's easier said than done. I mean, there's my experience. I probably was way too far on the 100-hour work week, and you guys might say that I'm way too far on the other side of committing to my family now. But there's a happy medium where you have to work super hard and be successful, but you can't ignore it to the rest of it. Because what's funny is when you pull away and you have time to think and you're whatever, you tend to come up with your best ideas that way. I mean, you guys saw it when I was out of town.
Well, and I think one thing is knowing like when to shut yourself off and when to cut yourself off as an entrepreneur. Like there is only so much that you can get done in a week and still be productive. You may feel like you are pedaling down that entire week, but at some point you're spinning your wheels and you're running yourself beyond where you should be. So cutting yourself off, even if that means turning your phone off and walking away to spend time with your loved ones, family, etc. I think that's huge, and it's finding the willpower to do that. Because I know it's hard for me to like lay my phone down even sometimes and pull away from my news feeds, my emails that I should be responding to, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a series of sprints. I mean, it's not a marathon, so you can't just run 80, 90 hours a week straight and never take a break. You also can't sprint the whole way. So to me, the way I like to do it is kind of in a series of sprints. So yeah, I mean, there are weeks in there, hopefully a week, not multiple weeks, where there are 100-hour that you commit. But then you got to your point, turn it off and go. So we turned the question completely around. That's fine, because I'm not a girlfriend and wouldn't want to speak to that side of the equation. But that's the way the entrepreneur maybe ought to take a look at it.
Yeah,